The wind rolled across the Wyoming plains like a living thing, rattling the porch boards of the Callahan ranchlet and sending little whirlwinds of dust across the yard. The late afternoon sun bled gold over the horizon, touching the fence lines and the grazing cattle in long, sleepy light. Inside the big old ranch house, Caleb Callahan stood by the window with his hat in his hands, staring out at the empty road that cut through the field. He'd been waiting all day for the train from Cheyenne, and for the woman it carried. It wasn't love he was expecting. He wasn't that foolish. It was practicality. That drove him to the agency, one of those frontier matchmakers who promised good, God-fearing women of fine moral standing. He needed someone who could cook, keep the place together, maybe laughed once in a while so the silence didn't get so heavy after dark. He'd asked for a woman who was strong but gentle, plain but pleasant, a pretty one he'd written, because every man hoped for a bit of sunshine to come home to after a day with the cattle. But what he wanted most was peace. When the wagon appeared over the rise, his heart gave a nervous thud. He hadn't felt that in years, not since before the war, before the fire that took his parents, before he'd learned to live without expecting much from anyone. The wagon creaked to a stop at the gate, and the driver, a young ranch hand from town, hopped down and tipped his hat. "You got your bride here, Mr. Callahan." Straight off the train, like they said. Caleb's throat went dry. A figure climbed down slowly from the wagon bed. She was small, thinner than he expected, with a patched dress and a shawl that looked too big for her. The dust clung to her boots and the hem of her skirt. Her hair was dark, pinned up tight, and her face was turned slightly away as she stepped down. But when she looked up, his breath hitched. She wasn't the woman from the photograph. The picture he'd been sent showed a fair-haired lady with a round face, dimpled smile, and soft, eager eyes. And the woman standing before him was pale from travel, sharp-featured, with storm-gray eyes that looked like they'd seen too much sorrow. The driver cleared his throat. This here's Miss Clara, sir." Caleb nodded slowly, still searching her face. "Miss Clara? Right, so, there must be some mistake." The woman drew in a breath, clutching the edge of her shawl. "There isn't," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but it carried like wind through dry grass. "I'm not the pretty one you ordered, Mr. Callahan." For a long moment, only the sound of the wind answered. Then Caleb did something that surprised even himself. He smiled, slow, weary, but genuine. "Ma'am," he said, stepping forward and tipping his hat, "I reckon you're all I needed." The driver tipped his hat again, muttered something about best of luck, and turned the wagon back toward town. Dust rose in a small golden cloud behind him until it was swallowed by the horizon. For a moment, the two of them, Caleb and Clara, just stood there on opposite sides of the gate, the air thick with unspoken things. Caleb finally gestured toward the house. "You must be worn clean through. Let's get you inside." Clara hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the porch, then to the long stretch of fields beyond. She looked as if she might run, but she only nodded and followed him. Her footsteps were quiet on the boards, and when she stepped inside, the smell of dust and pine oil greeted her. The house was large but empty, clean in the way a place becomes when a man does just enough to keep the ghosts from taking over. "I made up the spare room," Caleb said, setting her small carpet bag down by the doorway. "Didn't know what you'd like, so I kept it simple." She looked around. The furniture was old but well cared for. A faded quilt lay folded on the bed, the stitching delicate and neat. The window was open, letting in a bit of wind and the faint scent of sagebrush. "It's fine," she said. Her voice was low, polite. "More than fine, really." He nodded, unsure what else to say. He'd expected awkwardness, but this silence between them felt heavier than he'd imagined. "Miss Clara," he started, then stopped. "I just want to be sure. You're comfortable here. I know this wasn't quite what either of us planned." Her lips pressed together in a thin line. "You thought you were getting someone else." He didn't deny it. "I thought I was getting a woman named Lily. That was the name on the letter." Claire's gaze dropped to the floor. "Lily was my sister." That stopped him cold. She went on quietly. "She was the one who answered your advertisement. She passed before the train left." Caleb's hat dropped a little in his hand. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "She wanted to come," Clara said. "Said she'd finally found a man who sounded kind. When she took sick, she made me promise I'd come in her place. She said a man out here needed someone, and I had nowhere left to go." For a moment, the ranch house felt smaller, the walls closer. Caleb looked at her and saw not deception, but desperation, grief, and something else, a flicker of courage beneath the exhaustion. "You could have written," he said gently. "I did," she answered. "But maybe the letter never found you." He nodded slowly. "Well, Miss Clara, you're here now, and I'm not sending you back." Her eyes lifted, startled. "You're not?" Caleb gave a small shrug. "A deal's a deal, far as I see it, and I've had my fill of loneliness. Maybe we both could use a fresh start." Something softened in her face, then a little less guarded, a little more human. She turned to look out the window. where the fields stretched wide and golden under the sinking sun. "It's quiet here," she murmured. "Too quiet sometimes," he said. "But you'll get used to it." He left her to settle in and went out to the barn, though his thoughts stayed in that little room with her. A woman who'd come out of duty, not love, a man who'd asked for beauty and got truth instead. Somehow he couldn't bring himself to mind. Inside, Clara unpacked her things: a comb, a faded ribbon, a Bible with pages worn thin. Her fingers brushed the ribbon, the color nearly gone from years of use. Lily had tied it around her hair the day she got sick, smiling weakly from her bed. "Promise me you'll go," she'd said. "Promise you'll take my place. I can't marry a stranger. You can live again. That's more than I ever will." So Clara went, and now she stood in a stranger's house, staring out at the fields of a man she'd never met until an hour ago. A man who smiled at her when he had every right not to. That night when Caleb brought her a bowl of stew and a slice of bread, they ate in silence at the kitchen table. Outside, coyotes called across the plains, and the sound of the wind pressed against the windows. "You've got a good place here," Clara said quietly. "Could use a woman's touch," Caleb admitted. "It hasn't felt like a home in a long time." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Maybe it can be again." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from deep down, the kind a man forgets how to make until someone reminds him.